massive shock. That could have almost been career suicide.
She went full Geordie, I believe they call it.
Also eating 2 of the other 4 girls.
Surely they must know by now that they cannot get away with anything.
She got caught out, she lost her endorsements, she lost her fortune.
These are the shocking stories of sex.
Are you tempted just to say his name out loud?
Always the quiet ones though, isn't it?
Drugs.
There's Frank. He boffed us all, didn't he?
And dry cleaning.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
From presidents to posh boys.
Divine Brown.
Whether you're Hollywood royalty...
What was he thinking?
Or actual royalty.
Ooh, this was slightly embarrassing.
Tonight we're looking back at some of the most shocking scandals from the last 4 decades.
I forgot that ever happened. It was the most toe-curling half-hour of television.
You said? Go on, Watson. What would you say?
Strap in. It's going to be a rocky ride.
You idiot.
And kicking us off on our shock fest is the king of British rom-com.
The foppish.
Well, a bit rakish.
The classy.
Yeah. Very lovable, endearing.
English dandy. It is Hugh Grant.
Hugh was huge in the summer of '94, catapulted to stardom by Richard Curtis's film 4 Weddings and a Funeral. It broke British box office records and made his the hot name in Hollywood.
4 Weddings was huge in the States, and he is a very good comic actor. He's very attractive. He's great for film.
He was like a royal, really, you know. He was this kind of bumbling, foppish, posh character. And people believed he was like the guy in 4 Weddings and a Funeral, I think.
Well, he was definitely quite posh.
Well, I confess I quite like it, but it's probably not cool.
And he was squiring Miss Elizabeth Hurley. And she's deaf, very posh. And for a year, high-class Hugh ruled. He made us proud to be British.
But it's unusual for me even to have a job, let alone to, to have a success.
He's this phenomenon that has taken over the world. He's going out with one of the most beautiful women on the planet. He is at the height of celebrity and fame.
But in 1995, Hugh's reputation took a bit of a blow when he was arrested for lewd conduct in a public place with the possibility of 6 months' jail.
What was he thinking? What was he thinking?
Hugh Grant was arrested just off Sunset Boulevard at 1:30 in the morning.
Cruising in his convertible down LA's notorious Sunset Strip at night, Hugh met a local sex worker.
Divine Brown.
Who he paid $60, that's 37 quid, for a quick spit and polish. And not on the BMW.
A known prostitute then got into Mr. Grant's vehicle and they drove for a short distance to a nearby residential street where they engaged in a lewd act.
It was really a shock around the world. Here he was, one of the world's most popular actors, and this was a very sleazy thing to do.
She says, "Hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side."
Mr. Grant, you wouldn't thought fall into the category of actors who just cannot get their hands on a prostitute quick enough. That was what was so surprising. But she performed various acts, which is what interested, of course, the LAPD.
The best things about Hugh Grant incident is that mugshot.
Even his police photo was kind of, look at me.
Like, please don't let anyone else see this mugshot, please. And obviously the whole world did.
Whoops-a-daisy. Hugh was in a proper pickle.
When a celebrity gets caught in a scandal, which is often, the big question is, how are they going to apologize? How are they going to make it right? What is their statement going to say? Hugh Grant was already booked to be on Jay Leno before this whole Divine Brown thing happened, and most people expected he would cancel.
But he didn't.
There you go.
The audience anticipation went off the scale as we waited to see whether Jay Leno would spare his guests blushes.
What the hell were you thinking?
And we witnessed a masterclass response as Hugh won back approval with his characteristically disarming charm.
On this one, I keep reading new, psychological theories and stuff like that. I was under pressure, I was overtired, or I was lonely, or I fell down the stairs when I was a child, or whatever. But I think that would be bollocks, really, to hide behind something like that. You know, I think you know in life pretty much what's a good thing to do and what's a bad thing, and I did a bad thing, and there you have it.
I mean, that's...
It was a tour de force, one of the best all-time television apologies in the history of apologies. To this day, there are very few people who have pulled off an apology as well as he did.
It's effectively all the parts that you've seen Hugh Grant ever play. So he's straying his hair back into this fopping, there's plenty of that going on. But he does handle it very well. He does show a degree of humour. He shows absolute contrition. And so he got on with his life.
Get away with murder, I think, on these occasions.
Welcome back. Up next is the story of a pop princess, a public convenience, and a lollipop.
I'm a big fan of Cheryl's, I've got to say. I think she's gorgeous.
When she enters a room, she's got sort of a kind of ethereal quality to her.
She has a glittering career, a superstar boyfriend, and the world at her tiny, tiny Jimmy Choo'd feet. But it nearly turned out very differently back in the days when the artist formerly known as Mrs. Fernandez Versini, née Cole, was just plain Cheryl Tweedy, and a bust-up in the bogs resulted in a shameful trip to court.
I forgot that ever happened.
Rewind to 2002. Our fresh-faced Geordie had popped up on Popstars The Rivals and won a place in Girls Aloud, with whom she'd had a Christmas #1.
You could just see that there was this real buzz behind them, that there was a real expectation that these girls were going to be big.
Until one fateful night in a Guildford nightclub when Shezza hit the booze, a toilet attendant, and the headlines in spectacular fashion.
That's a massive shock. That could have almost been career suicide for her.
5 weeks after securing a place in the girl-bound Girls Aloud, Cheryl is accused of punching a toilet attendant in the face.
That's right. Pop sweetheart Cheryl almost derailed her fledgling band before they'd barely begun.
Cheryl and Nicola were out in a bar called The Drink, and they'd had a little bit too much to drink, and they went into the toilet where there was a toilet attendant with hairspray, sweets randomly. The story goes that Cheryl took one too many lollies, and toilet attendant tried to get her to pay. Some kind of kerfuffle emerged.
Yes, the diminutive star went full-on Mike Tyson, and the result was astonishing.
She went full Geordie, I believe they call it.
Cheryl was taken to court for assault, but the toilet attendant accused her of being racist. Cheryl got off the racist accusation, but she was given community service and fined for assault.
I'm not a racist, and anyone who knows me knows that I would not say anything racist.
Most people who are charged with assault, convicted of assault, you know, their career would probably be lying in tatters on the floor.
But you can't keep a Geordie lass down, and several grovelling apologies later...
So sorry to the other 4 girls and to my fans, to my family and my friends.
And the victim? Girls Aloud was soon back on top, and Cheryl, well, she became a national treasure.
People are happy to forgive her because people love nothing more than someone who makes a mistake, holds the hand up and then gets on with it and sort of accepts that they've made an error.
If Cheryl's shame played out in public, our next celeb tried to keep his shenanigans a secret.
Are you tempted just to say his name out loud?
Do you know, I'm so upset by what I've been called. I've been so tempted just to say, yeah, it's that person. Because why should I be taking all this flack and him get away with everything, basically?
So Ryan Giggs was the footballer who was not allowed to be named when it emerged that a footballer had had an affair, a 6-month affair, with Big Brother star Imogen Thomas.
No! Not Giggsy! He's one of the good guys, surely.
He had led the life of the model pro. He'd been BBC Sports Personality of the Year in 2009, the most decorated footballer in modern history, and there would have been no hint of scandal around him.
And I think the shock of it was, he was basically the only footballer that wasn't a dick. In the sea of Ashley Coles, there was a Ryan Giggs in the distance, stood on top of a pile of footballs like Jesus, sort of looking perfect. And hadn't cheated and was like a real family man. And it ended up that, in fact, he had been doing that. He's just got a really shit-hot lawyer.
I think the case with Ryan Giggs and the Big Brother star Imogen Thomas was the first time, really, that the public became aware of the word injunctions.
Ah, the super injunction. The law that allows rich people to get away with things that normal people can't afford to keep out of the papers. Since Giggsy in 2011, it seems the world and his celebrity wife have taken them out. But our Ryan was the first to fail to keep his anonymity.
Because Scottish papers are not bound by English legal law, they named Ryan Giggs. He was also named on Twitter, not just once, but 75,000 times.
Power of Twitter meant all it took was for someone to know his name, and then that spiralled and spiralled and spiralled.
For 6 weeks, we all knew that Giggs was the mystery cheater, but we couldn't say it out loud. Until, whoops, it slipped out, care of an honourable member of Parliament.
And I believe the Liberal Democrat MP, John Hemming, used parliamentary privilege to name him, saying, what, we're going to put 70,000 Twitter users in prison.
We at Heat magazine interviewed Imogen, and we had to be really careful because the injunction was still in place. I could have gone to jail, which was quite exciting.
Could well be the end of the story, except it's not. Enter his sister-in-law.
Which is exactly what he did for 8 years.
And she unveiled several details of their relationship.
Always the quiet ones, though, isn't it? It's always the quiet ones.
Cool new meaning to playing away from home, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And if filthy footballers can't behave, the Royals aren't much better.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
Yes, this was the worst year of the decade for our Liz.
An annus horribilis.
Squidgygate, Camillagate, all of her children's marriages went up in smoke, as did Windsor Castle. HM had to even start paying taxes. A taxing year indeed. But there was one story that really made our toes curl.
The royal story always surprised me, but this was ridiculous.
It was all over the papers.
Have they no dignity? It was shocking, but it was also quite funny.
Buckingham Palace has issued a statement following the publication of intimate photographs of the Duchess of York.
In August 1992, the Queen's daughter-in-law, Sarah Ferguson, was laid bare in some saucy red-top snaps.
So I'm lying in bed, get a phone call, as happened as a news correspondent. Jen, we need you in the office. Yeah, OK, what? Oh, it's Fergie. What? Yeah, she's been found having her toes sucked by her financial advisor in the south of France, topless. Can you get in the office? She'd gone off on holiday with this new boyfriend who was apparently her financial advisor, a guy called John Bryan, who was clearly a little bit more than a financial advisor because he was actually sucking her toes.
What part of financial advice means that you suck your client's toes? I have financial advice. My toes aren't sucked.
But you're not Sarah Ferguson. Sarah and Andrew married in 1986, but Fergie would not be brought to heel, and her barely regal antics made it clear she was not one to toe the royal line.
From her earliest appearances with the royal family, the Duchess's boisterous behaviour has been a contrast to the usual royal aloofness.
We all called her a breath of fresh air, but it would have been much more appropriate to say she was a stonking loose cannon.
Although Andrew and Fergie's separation had been announced earlier that year, Sarah was still staying with the royals at Balmoral and woke up to a family confronted with the bare-all pictures. Crumpet, anyone?
I had a message from a friend at Balmoral who told me no newspapers appeared that morning. Everybody reads the newspapers at breakfast. It's royal tradition. Prince Philip was up in arms. Where's my paper? Where's my paper? And the staff were keeping the papers behind the scenes. They didn't want anyone to see them. But of course, that was impossible.
For Fergie, nothing could have been more embarrassing than these photos being plastered over the front pages and inside pages of every newspaper.
When they saw the papers, the place exploded. The air was blue.
The palace accused the media of invasion of privacy. Financial advisor John Bryan's defence was he was only kissing her instep, far more courtly. And the Queen put her foot down, banishing Fergie to the Balmoral Lodge House. Suck on that.
The royal family were just up in arms. This was the biggest scandal of the decade. Fergie having her toes sucked. Incredible. Shocking.
While Fergie's feet were being fetishised, it was all about the nose for our next celeb.
Was I surprised? No. Was I disappointed? Yes.
Croydon's finest Kate Moss has been at the top of the supermodel A-list for 25 years.
She's got a real charisma, and I think in an age where so many celebrities just open their lives up for cash and publicity, she just doesn't. Like, how many times have you even heard her speak?
Yes, Mossy is an enigma, which has ensured enduring media fascination since the 90s, along with a string of rock and roll boyfriends.
I know people who work with her. She's as good as gold. She turns up on time. She will give you exactly what you want, and then she'll go home and party.
Can you see where this is headed?
She's sex, drugs and rock and roll.
She will go down in the annals because of her exploits.
And no more than when she hooked up with baby shambles, total shambles, Pete Doherty. Wow, look at him. You can see the appeal, can't you?
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't the greatest of characters. You wouldn't be going, great boyfriend material when you saw him.
The shocking moment that Kate's mystery was lost came in 2005 in a recording studio where she dropped her carefully protected guard, snorted some coke, and ended up as a front page exclusive.
There, in black and white for you, is the picture of, you know, this adored, beautiful woman who's at the, you know, the top of her game, shoving coke up her nose.
I mean, if Kate was dressed as a Nazi and her front bum was quoting Mein Kampf, then that might have been a story, but Kate having a line, come on.
I was shocked that Kate Moss, somebody who's so private, so careful, and she'd been caught doing coke. That paper is over 10 years ago, and everyone remembers Cocaine Kate.
And worse still, being caught doing cocaine isn't a good look when you're a brand ambassador for hundreds of snooty products.
I thought she's done.
She got caught out, she lost her endorsements, you know, she lost her fortune.
But you can't keep a Croydon girl down. She soon ditched Edward Doherty and found herself in demand more than ever before.
She recovers in 2 seconds. She's the only one who could do that, not just out of all the supermodels, out of everyone in the public eye. She's the luckiest person on earth, I'm telling you.
Shocked by that? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
The biggest and the best baddie ever was Dirty Dan, and he was filthy. There was no one that was safe from this man in the square.
That made him compulsive viewing, really, you know, because it's those sort of baddies are always the characters that everyone really gets drawn to.
I don't think any of the soap stars these days get anything like the star adulation that he did in those days.
I've been waiting for the backlash. Oh, so you're ill, are you? Well, what's wrong with you, eh? What you got?
Leslie Grantham always played Dirty Den with a sense of tension and underlying violence, as shown in this altercation with his screen wife, Angie.
Don't try that one on me, Ange, because it won't wash. No way you ever going to get me back.
But in 1985, the papers revealed Grantham's dirty past. He'd served time in prison for murdering a German taxi driver.
Talk about bad boy. The guy had been serving a life sentence for murder.
This was a story that was bigger than the programme, if you like.
This is huge. This is front page news. This was like, oh my God moment.
TV star is secret murderer. That is not a bad headline.
This guy is a monster and he's on our TV screens playing every day.
Some suspect that the revelation came at a very opportune moment for the BBC's, at the time, fledgling soap opera.
It is no word of a lie to say that Leslie Grantham's secret murder past is what made EastEnders a success. Suddenly, it was getting talked about and watched. And from that point onwards, the viewing figures of EastEnders went up and up and up.
Whether or not they were responsible for the leak, BBC bosses didn't ditch Dirty Dan.
The fact the BBC stood by him is undoubtedly a brave decision.
We're not going to sack him because of something that happened 20 years ago. You know, the ratings are good, he's a decent bloke now, you know, he's learnt the error of his ways, we hope.
I wonder in today's world whether Mr. Grantham would have survived, but I'm bloody glad he did.
And we'll leave the last word to one of Den's rivals for all-time biggest soap baddies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Paul Robinson, a.k.a. Stefan Dennis.
The fact that he got a life sentence, but he's ended up working in EastEnders. Maybe that was his life sentence. Oh, no, I didn't say that at all. No. Hey, EastEnders, I love you guys. That was... Don't cut. Whoosh.
Welcome back. Our next story takes us back to 1988 and the shocking tale of one of the Beebs' safest pairs of hands.
Well, we'll be back indeed for a full weekend weather preview at 5 to 7.
In the 1980s, one of the biggest and best-loved names on TV was Frank Bough.
Frank Bough. It's like he lives down your road. He is your friend.
Frank Bough was the nation's uncle.
I think I'm going to enjoy this programme.
Would you have trusted him with your house? Yes. Would you have trusted him with your car keys? Yes.
Everybody knew him. Everybody trusted him. He was lovely, Uncle Frank.
BBC should know in about 10 days or so whether its early morning programmes are receiving the 2 million or so viewers they're expected to receive.
Frank went from star to megastar when he fronted Britain's first ever breakfast TV show in 1983.
He was in our living room every single morning while we're having our cornflakes. He's part of the fixture and furnishings of everybody's home.
I was up against him on TVAM, but I had nothing but respect for him.
But in 1988, Frank's career came crashing down as he was caught in a very compromising position.
The newspaper arrived, and on the front page was a story about Frank Bough.
This clean-living man had been snorting cocaine with hookers in a seedy brothel.
This is absurd. This isn't the sort of bloke who's smacked off his tits and having sex with a tart.
Frank Bough. I took drugs with Vice girls? Frank Bough? It was absolutely shocking.
It's too much. It gets you there, doesn't it?
It wasn't very nice. Like learning something that a dearly loved uncle in your own family had some ghastly secret.
The BBC sort of felt they had no alternative but to get rid of him. And then he revived his career. LWT had him back.
Now, if you've just joined us, welcome to the very first 6 o'clock live. And now to our first story.
And then he got caught again, doing it again.
And then that was it for Frank Bough. I think he was never seen on our screens again.
That's crazy, isn't it? Now then, let's change the subject.
It was the end of his career because his career was about being dependable, friendly, and ultimately the most trustworthy broadcaster in Britain.
He just retired to his Thameside house and started doing the gardening and resisted all invitations ever to talk about it, to go back on television, to go back on radio.
I still haven't got over the Frank Bough extravaganza. I am still shocked.
He was Frank. Anyway, he boffed us all, didn't he?
And Frank Bough wasn't the only middle-aged posh man to get caught out by his kinky ways.
Ooh, now this was slightly embarrassing, because I was stood beside the princess, and she said to me, "You'll never guess what's happened." And I couldn't believe what had happened.
And neither could we back in 1992, when we opened our newspapers and were treated to the shocking transcript of a downright dirty phone conversation between Prince Charles and his mistress, Camilla Parker Bowles.
The gradual breakdown of the Charles and Diana marriage was nothing but rumour and gossip at the very beginning, and most people didn't believe it. And then it was very clear that certain members of the press were being briefed by Diana and Charles separately.
It was his idea. He decided enough was enough.
We had to go through all of Squidgygate when the princess is saying very rude things about the royal family, to Tampon Gate, as it was called, a phone conversation late at night between Charles and Camilla. And when the contents of that conversation came out, no one could believe what they were hearing. We had Prince Charles and Camilla talking softly to one another, lovingly to one another, about how they missed one another. And then the prince, unfortunately, went a little further than that and said that, given the choice, he'd like to be so close to her, really, that he'd like to be a tampon. in her trousers, I think.
Princess Diana said to me, "What kind of love talk is that? Who, in their right minds, would want to be someone's tampon?" She said, "I think he's got something loose. He's not all there, is he?"
Tampon Gate caused shock, outrage, and a tremendous amount of tittering.
It was a shock. He became a laughing stock. I thought, how is he going to go out in the next day or two and carry out public duties when he knows that everyone's going to be sniggering and laughing and talking behind his back?
But there's one person who most definitely wouldn't have seen the funny side.
I'm not sure what the Queen felt. The Queen gets every newspaper every morning. She read it too.
One is not amused, but one does find the antics of this next rapscallion quite funny.
I did buy Justin Bieber's first single. Baby, baby.
In 2009, Canada bestowed a gift upon the popular music charts of the entire world, and that gift was 15-year-old Justin Bieber.
He's so cute.
A kid who could sing and dance the way he could, and he was a really cute, good-looking kid. Yeah, I can see the appeal.
Good to see you, mate. Good to see you. Have a lovely Christmas.
You too. And then he grew up to be a brat.
What'd you say? Good, what's it, man? What'd you say?
Yes, we quickly realised that bratty Bieber was the gift we didn't want, and wondered if Canada had kept the receipt.
He's been given millions of dollars and then told not to be a dickhead. Like, of course he's going to be a knob. Like, I was a knob at 17, and I was on £4.80 an hour.
We don't have time to cover all of Justin's outrageous behaviour, but here are some of the most shocking highlights. Buckle up, people.
Threw a few eggs and piss in a bucket. That's not that bad. Like, I know people who've done worse than that in one holiday.
The LA Fuzz didn't see it like that.
I get that the eggs don't seem that significant, but it does rise to the level of a felony. There is a victim in this case who had extensive damage done to their home, and that's a serious incident.
It was serious enough to land the little vandal with 40 hours community service. But Bieber really took his bad boy makeover up a gear in January 2014 when he was arrested on suspicion of drag racing on the streets of Miami.
Is he old enough to drive?
He was old enough to find himself in night court, where the charges piled up against him.
Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following: DUI, alcohol or drugs.
I think that means drink driving.
Resisting without violence.
Kicking off without actually kicking off.
And driving with an expired driver's license.
That's just lazy.
You'll remember that kind of court appearance, you know, looking so sheepish. But was he, you know, repentant?
He doesn't look that upset. Bieber escaped jail with a $500 fine and a $50,000 charity donation by pleading guilty to the lesser charges of careless driving and resisting arrest. But his public image was still on trial. This wasn't helped when celebrity news site TMZ got hold of a video that his management probably didn't want the world to see.
I defy you to watch that deposition of Justin Bieber and not think douchebag.
A photographer accused one of Bieber's bodyguards of being a tad overzealous in protecting the star. So young Justin had to give his side of the story, but he didn't want to make it easy for them.
This is a film?
Pause it. Would you please watch the television?
You said it's a film. You should watch the film. Is this a film?
Can you answer my question? You remember being in Australia ever?
I don't know if I've been to Australia. I've been to Australia?
He is smarmy, he is smug, he's entitled, he's rude, he's disrespectful, he's obnoxious.
Haven't been to Australia.
There was actually a petition to deport him back to Canada, which had nearly 300,000 signatures.
All right, hands up if you signed it. Only kidding, believers. Because then Justin did something really shocking. He made a new album. And more astonishing, appeared to have learnt a new word.
I'm sorry, but it's brilliant. I absolutely love this album.
I don't think Justin Bieber's ever going to stop being an asshole, because I don't think you can. However, because he's talented and he's good looking and he seems to do a good job apologizing, I think there'll always be people who give him the benefit of the doubt, who forgive him, who like his music, and who give him another chance.
I'm a believer. I can't believe I just said that.
If Bieber was being a bad boy in the States, over here a primetime favourite was about to get scooped.
It was the most toe-curling half hour of television I think I have ever seen.
Never seen anything like that before on television, and you never will again.
In 2002, Angus Deaton, host of Have I Got News for You for 12 years, was caught in a tabloid sting, fraternising with a vice girl in a hotel and taking cocaine. Not good.
Well, because we knew it was coming, and it's really interesting. It's a really complicated scenario if you're a comedian talking about the news and then you become the news. His persona on that show, the kind of high status, he always knew best and he always had all the answers.
But once Deaton had become the news, the credibility of the show was under threat, and it was clear Hislop and Merton were not happy about it.
Ian and Paul made a meal out of it. They loved it, and they mercilessly ribbed him and raked him over the coals. And I have to say that Angus took it on the chin, and he conducted himself pretty well.
I'm surprised you had a nerve to turn up this week, really. You knew it was going to be like this.
Well, I did, yes, because of you two.
Yes, in a way, it's our fault, isn't it?
Boy, they gave him a rough ride. And you could see that he was kind of wilting underneath it, that he was just desperate for it to end. He was like meat thrown to the dogs.
At the end of the day, they had to sort of apply the same treatment to him that they'd been applying to everyone else.
And it was just excruciating.
And things went from bad to worse, culminating in this now classic moment when Merton inflicted a killer blow.
I think it's very bad, really, to have bought the newspapers on. Imagine going to that kind of effort to, you know, I mean, I was as guilty of Ian, really, of sort of bringing on the front cover of the News of the World. I mean, it's really... To go to all that kind of effort is just unbelievable.
It must have been the most horrific couple of hours filming for Angus, but I find myself actually willing him on through it. But you're taking absolutely everything. You've come to filming, you've known that it's going to be pretty hard. It is horrific. I actually found myself pretty much Team Angus at the end of that.
Despite this mauling from his co-stars, Angus remained in the hot seat, taking a pay cut from a whopping 50 grand to a still pretty whopping 25 grand per episode. But when he got caught for a second time later that year, the Beeb were left with no choice but to give him the boot.
Working on a show like that, he was definitely somebody who was going to be crucified for his private pleasures.
Join us after the break for two of the most scandalous scandals in scandal history.
It was shocking. There's no other way to say it.
Welcome back. Our final two stories involve some of the most famous people on the planet. First up is these two. Never heard of them.
They're huge. I mean, they're massive. They're such a good-looking couple. They've got gorgeous kids. You know, it's this perfect, happy family.
This was a relationship made in heaven. This was the love story that kind of made us have faith in love again. That made us have faith in long-term, forever relationships. And suddenly, on a Sunday morning, it was blown apart.
For this woman, this vixen, this minx to suddenly come out of the woodwork and say, you know what? I've been doing it with David Beckham and he's an amazing lover and he made me feel great. I was gutted. I thought, oh no, David, why?
In April 2004, the Beckhams of Buckingham Palace faced their toughest test to date. Her name was Rebecca Lewis.
You could probably argue that the Rebecca Lewis scandal was the biggest story of the whole decade when it comes to celebrity.
We hear the story from Rebecca Lewis, David Beckham's PA in Madrid, and they've had an alleged fling. This was massive.
Well, it was David Beckham. I think we all would, wouldn't we?
Well, if Rebecca Lewis was to be believed, she definitely would. And she did. But with stunning efficiency and minimal fuss, the Beckhams managed to brush this off and continue to build their empire.
It is worth pointing out that I think that David has dismissed those allegations as ludicrous. They've never confirmed them.
And things carried on as though it hadn't happened.
But what did happen to Rebecca?
If she'd just left it at that, gone away gracefully, then you might have remembered Rebecca Lewis as this, you know, scorned woman. But then she went on the farm.
So I remember sitting there watching live on the farm when Rebecca pleasured a pig in front of the nation.
Yes, despite allegedly having an affair with the most famous footballer on the planet, this extremely graphic piece of farming is what Rebecca Lewis will always be remembered for.
She thinks that everyone's going to watch and think, she's really good at that. She's got a really good technique.
She takes to it like a pig to water with the correct hand movements that just made us think, oh, what was David thinking if he was ever there?
It doesn't matter where you're from. It seems no one can resist fiddling with the help.
It was shocking. There's no other way to say it. The President of the United States getting blowjobs under his desk in the Oval Office is really appalling.
20 years before slut-shaming was a thing, this was the story that scandalised our American cousins, impeached President Bill Clinton, mortified Monica Lewinsky, and highlighted the importance of keeping up with one's dry cleaning.
Well, Monica Lewinsky was working in the Clinton White House as an intern.
This word intern was bandied around at the time, and we Brits didn't really get it.
Bill Clinton, the intern with Clinton.
Clinton.
Clinton's intern.
Being an intern just means learning on the job. Oh, good grief. Start again.
Bill Clinton is in the White House. It's the mid-90s. There's an unpaid intern called Monica Lewinsky. She's 22, he's 46. About 5 months after she's in her unpaid position, she finds a really good position. Under the president, as far as I can tell.
Now, from what we know about Bill Clinton, this was the kind of girl that Bill Clinton had been linked to in the past. You know, he likes a busty, curvy girl.
Big horse teeth, big old country and western hair. Do you just think those are the girls that you had in high school?
But this wasn't high school, this was the White House. Not that you'd know it, because but what happened was, Linda Tripp told everyone that Monica gave Bill a blowjob under the desk.
Linda Tripp was somebody who knew Monica. She was a friend, and she hated the Clintons. And when Monica kind of confessed everything to her, Linda then gave it to the press.
The Lewinsky Gate. That was the ultimate media tabloid story, certainly in that era.
It is so fantastically, salaciously interesting that you do try to find deeper, more serious justifications for running it, running it as big as you possibly can.
Then it just got worse and worse. As the more you learned about it, the more tacky it became. And then when Bill Clinton actually went on television and denied that he'd ever had sexual relations with that woman...
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
I didn't have sexual relations with that woman. That's what he famously said. Well, he did, because he come on her clothes.
Central to the whole shockstorm was Monica's navy blue dress from Gap, because it had a particular stain down the front.
He did his business over her dress, to be blunt. His business? Yeah, he blew his saxophone all over her dress.
Oh, my gosh. He's supposed to be doing work. He's supposed to be looking after his country. You know, not bloody coming on people's clothes.
She essentially became famous for not taking her dress to the dry cleaners.
That's right, yeah.
That was part of the investigation and led, of course, to the impeachment hearings.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
This could bring him down.
I never told anybody to lie.
If there is enough evidence...
President Slick Willie was in deep trouble, officially charged with lying to cover his own arse.
Have no alternative but to impeach him and remove him from office.
The really riveting thing about the story was the way Clinton squirmed on the hook. The first line of defense was that oral sex wasn't sex. The second line was that because it was done to him, not by him, wasn't his sexual relations.
It then boiled down to what are sexual relations and what aren't. And there, I mean, a huge debate in the world's media about what's sexual relations and what isn't. Oh, really horrible, tacky stuff. And yet he survived it.
I misled people, including even my wife.
Hillary stood by her husband during the Monica Lewinsky affair, which a lot of people applauded and a lot of people thought was the wrong move. So she stood by him, and now he's standing by her.
What sucked was that the whole sticky mess unfairly left a stain on only one person's reputation.
Poor Monica Lewinsky kind of disappeared for a while. Her name, Lewinsky, became synonymous with the word for a blowjob. She was vilified.
The whole thing left a bad taste in the mouth.
It changed our culture, actually. It just shows you can get away with almost murder if you have enough charisma.
So there you have it. We hope you enjoyed our dirty dozen celebrity scandals. Night-night.